I didn't love the Miles Sanders comment, especially coming from a guy who's probably not, one of the top 3 or 4 options offensively too. So I thought that was an odd situation. I guess comparing it to the Dream Team comment, Vince Young was the backup quarterback and said that, right? So it might seem like a little situation of a guy speaking out of his place. And then I don't know if you guys saw, A.J. Brown chimed in on Twitter and quote tweeted a report of Sanders' initial proclamation and played it down pretty well. Something that you'd really like to see, even though a guy who hasn't played a single snap at Midnight Green yet, kind of being a leader in a way, at least vocally on social media, to kind of quell those fires. Because, in Philadelphia, amongst Eagles fans, Philly sports fans, the Dream Team is something that lives in absolute infamy.
Johnny Mac and Jody Mac here with you on Birds 365. We had another Philly guy in for the mix. We're going to talk to the deputy editor. I got to find out exactly what that means. Of PhillyVoice.com. Shamus Clancy joins us here on Birds 365.
I'm the number 2 over there. That's what deputy is.
Number 2. That's all. It's just that plain and simple. Fancy words, but the bottom line is I'm number 2.
That's what.
Yeah, let's go on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to prop it up. Deputy sounds better than number 2. It sounds more exciting. Come on, Jody. It's good to see you, Shamus.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me back on.
Thrilled to have you. I guess we'll start because I woke up yesterday. I didn't expect all these crazy proclamations, but I got a bunch of them. And it leads me down the road of expectations. And that's what I want to ask you about. Because the expectations are really ramping up here in the dead period as we get closer to training camp. I got some Quez Watkins. Jody knows this. It's better than Tyler Boyd. I got Kenny Gainwell's going to be a star running back. People are going overboard. Shamus, do you think it's going to affect the team at all? People look at the Dream Team back in 2011. They compare it to Miles Sanders quotes. Jalen Hurts calls it rat poison, which can be good or bad. People patting you on the back or too much criticism could work both ways. You think this kind of stuff affects the players, or it's kind of overblown?
I didn't love the Miles Sanders comment, especially coming from a guy who's probably not, one of the top 3 or 4 options offensively too. So I thought that was an odd situation. I guess comparing it to the Dream Team comment, Vince Young was the backup quarterback and said that, right? So it might seem like a little situation of a guy speaking out of his place. And then I don't know if you guys saw, A.J. Brown chimed in on Twitter and quote tweeted a report of Sanders' initial proclamation and played it down pretty well. Something that you'd really like to see, even though a guy who hasn't played a single snap at Midnight Green yet, kind of being a leader in a way, at least vocally on social media, to kind of quell those fires. Because, in Philadelphia, amongst Eagles fans, Philly sports fans, the Dream Team is something that lives in absolute infamy. And for the All-Star team, obviously it's not maybe as crazy or as outrageous as Dream Team, but definitely brought up those vibes. And that was instantly what I thought of, and likely what you guys thought of and most Eagles fans thought of when they heard that. Now, does it really play a role into how the players perform? I don't really know, right? What's your guys' take on that? I don't think it necessarily – there's always going to be expectations. There's for teams, for individuals. I mean, A.J. Brown has had expectations every year in his career, right? Jalen Hurts has had expectations every year in his career. They don't necessarily correlate immediately to this team has to win 11, 12, 13 games and go to the Super Bowl. But there's expectations on everyone, every game, every season. So I don't think it's going to bleed in too much. I think the John wrote on Philly Voice a couple weeks back, the coaching continuity in this organization going from year 1 to year 2, having that same core nucleus here is going to make a huge difference. And as a team that didn't have expectations last year, had a little bit of a rough going, but rounded themselves out and made a surprise playoff berth, I think having that organizational mandate and influence in place already with Sirianni and his staff will do wonders to help quell any concerns about there being outsized expectations, letting the media and the fan base's expectations affect what's actually going on the field.
Shamus, I think your point about who said it is quite important. Yes, Miles Sanders said what he said, and then A.J. Brown tried to walk it back a little bit and did a nice job of it. Well, 2 days ago on with NFL Media, Lane Johnson said, I think we've got a great roster. What's the difference between being a team of all-stars and we have a great roster? Yeah, a little bit, but he also added thereafter that we still have to go out and play, which is the exact way you put a quote like that out, is you qualify it a little bit. And the reason why it doesn't get near as much attention is because it's Lane Johnson. He's a Pro Bowl guy. He's allowed to say that. He's been there and done that. Miles Sanders is still trying to prove himself, and it's going to be a huge year for him because it is the last year of his contract. If it had been Jason Kelsey that said that, I don't think anybody would have batted an eye. Do you?
No, I think it's different. I think the all-star has a buzzword connotation with it that's more gossipy and headliney rather than just saying we have a great roster, right? If Lane Johnson said that 3 weeks ago, I'm not even sure we would remember that because it's sort of a blasé comment. And I like that he put a qualifier there, and maybe Miles, kind of a learning experience for him in terms of talking to the media, speaking out, hyping up himself and his teammates. Yeah, but if it's a situation where it's a Super Bowl hero, a guy who's been through wars and come out victorious like Jason Kelsey or Lane Johnson, guys that have not just made Pro Bowl teams, but all pro teams in their career, have won Super Bowls, have been on the greatest roster in Eagles history. I think that speaks a little bit different than Miles Sanders, who, while a talented player, has had some success in his career, is, not an all-star, not a Pro Bowler, not this type of player that essentially being relied upon to speak up in these situations and, take the temperature of the fan base.
I want to bring up Shamus, one of Jimmy's latest pieces, our buddy Jimmy Kemsky from Philly Boys. He was sort of breaking down what Jalen Hurts needs to do to be the Eagles quarterback in 2023. So moving forward, not just this year. Obviously, he's going to be the quarterback this year. And I found it interesting for a couple reasons. One, because he went down the entire list of quarterbacks, projected starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And he used the term prime meridian. I always use demarcation line on this show. But it's interesting. We land on the same guy. I tell Jody can tell you all the time. I say Kirk Cousins, he's the guy. He's probably better than your quarterback if you're a fan watching this show, but he's probably not good enough to win with. So to me, he's the guy. He's the guy. I put Derek Carr in that category as well. Pretty darn good quarterback, but you probably know everything's got to be perfect for you to win with those guys. Jimmy put Jalen Hurts right behind Kirk Cousins. Now, so I think it was 14-15. Now there's potential. There's potential to get better. But if you look at those top 14 names on Jimmy's list, on most people's list, boy, it's tough to get Jalen Hurts. It's tough to believe he's going to get better than that group. There's a couple guys. Can he get better? Mac Jones, I probably wouldn't have had up that high. Jimmy had him higher. But there's a couple guys lower, I might say. Well, they've done more than Jalen Hurts. Where are you with Jalen Hurts? I mean, is there a ceiling to where he can get up in that top 10? Because that top 10 is pretty stinking impressive in this league.
Yeah, I don't think a top 10 is really necessarily realistic. I think a situation where he could be top 12, top 13. Jimmy had Kirk Cousins at 15, 14, 16 or so there. I think there's a situation that come, 4 or 5 months from now, Jalen Hurts is ahead of that prime meridian, but not necessarily a guy he had ahead of, if you remember in the article, Dak Prescott he had as a guy that was bolded in there saying that, if you have a guy above this, hand him whatever contract he wants, do whatever he wants. It's a long-term marriage. I don't know if Jalen Hurts is really going to get to that this specific season or really ever maybe in terms of being a top 10 quarterback. But I think a situation where he's a top 12 or 13 quarterback is fairly realistic. And it's a situation where you spoke about Derek Carr, who I like. I think I like him more than most people. He needs the perfect roster around him to have a chance to truly, truly contend for a Super Bowl. And I'm not Miles Sanders here saying the Eagles have an all-star team, but this is a really great roster in place and one offensively that should suit Jalen Hurts better than almost anything he could find out there, given the new talent wide receiver, the top 3 wide receivers, the best 3 wide receivers in terms of, a rotation, a top 3 set that the Eagles have had in a long, long time, I think. Maybe, I guess, since Deshaun Jackson, Jason Avant, and Jeremy Maclin, perhaps. I think that would be a fair comparison there. Offensive line, made the case. It was the best offensive line in the NFL last year. Rushing attack, even though you don't have necessarily a superstar running back there, this true 3-down bell cow back. It was still a prolific rushing attack, the best in the NFL and one of the best, if not the best, in Eagles history. And the defense looks improved, right? They were second to last in the NFL in sacks last season, added some pass rushing talent, made some moves on the outside of cornerback to bolster themselves there. Still a little weak at safety, but not every team's going to have absolutely zero holes on there, right? Even if they are on a path towards contention. So I don't think Jalen Hurts is necessarily a guy that we're going to be comparing to Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert for the next half dozen years or something along those lines as guys from that 2020 quarterback class. But at the same time, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he could be the 12th best quarterback in the league, and that could be happen as soon as this January. And the Eagles are hosting a home playoff game, and I think he has the guts, the skills, the legs, and the intangibles there to win a playoff game at home if that's the situation that comes to play. And I agree with Jimmy. There's no true statistical benchmark here that's going to make everyone say like, oh, Jalen Hurts hit his 28th touchdown pass this year, and he only has 9 interceptions. He eclipsed 3,800 passing yards. That means he's the guy. It's just not that simple. It's more of a feel. It's a vibe. I guess that's more the intangible that kind of speaks to a little bit of the way that Hurts is propped up as this guy with outstanding intangibles. But it's going to be either obvious or not obvious whether this guy is, the true captain going forward, I think.
Shamus, another one of our buds, like your guy, Jimmy Kempski, Ruben Frank over at NBC Sports, Philly Sports, had a great stat in his column this week about runners in the National Football League last year with runs of 10 yards or more. Jalen Hurts was 4th in the NFL, only behind Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb and Dalvin Cook. He had more 10-yard runs than every other player in the National Football League, except for those 3. If the Eagles become what we think they're going to become, which is more of a passing team, you add A.J. Brown, to a lesser extent, you add Zach Pascal. Otherwise, you're bringing back your same wide receivers en masse. You're adding 2 upgraded options and keeping everybody else. Yeah, you expect the Eagle passing game, more yardage, more throws, more success through the air than you had last year. But if that's the case, something needs to lose out. Something's going to be leaned on less. And we all believe it's going to be Jalen Hurts and when he takes off and makes plays with his legs, either by design or by impromptu action of the quarterback himself. Some of those plays were pretty darn important for the Eagles last year, moving chain quarterback runs that helped the Eagles keep the ball and move it down the field and score points. Is there any concern for you that, yes, they're going to throw the ball more? They'll be better throwing the ball. Jalen Hurts is going to throw for more yards. He's going to throw for more touchdowns. But the big plays that he made with his legs won't be as big a part this year. Does that concern you at all?
I think we'll see less designed runs for Jalen Hurts, but if it's in those high leverage situations, he's dropping back. It's 3rd and 6. They're at the 39-yard line. No one's open. 1st, 2nd, 3rd read aren't there, and he tucks it down and gets 9-10 yards. I still think that's going to happen from time to time, though I think the situation where he's lining up in the shotgun, doing some sort of read option, that's going to happen less. He had 784 rushing yards in 2021. I was looking at some over and unders, did a little article on that last week on his projected stats going into this year. I think the rushing yards were set at 725. I went slightly under. I'm pegging him somewhere around, I said 707 was the number I pulled out for that. And I think it's going to be a situation where he's having less design runs, but there's still going to be plays and situations where he has that impact on the ground with those legs, and especially if you're getting situations where it's 3rd or even 4th down back there.
Shamus, I want to go sort of to the theme of expectations. And I want you to throw those expectations out the door, but I want you to tell me who the most underrated player on this team you think is as we head towards training camp, and the most overrated player on this team as we head towards training camp.
Is there a chance Brandon Graham could be underrated, giving all of his accolades?
Yes, I say it all the time. I say it all the time.
Maybe in the historical hierarchy for Eagles, there's a lot of great Eagles defensive linemen over the years, but in the sense that he was out for the majority of last season, goes down with that Achilles tear in week 2 home game against San Francisco, and was a huge hole in the running game as much as it was in the passing game. I think Brandon Graham has been for years one of the best run-stopping defensive ends out there, as well as a guy who's getting constantly getting pressures and hurries back there Made his first Pro Bowl team in 2020, even at the age of that was his 32-year age season. And I think having a season where the pass rush was depleted, yes, they had some really good talent on the inside of defensive tackle, but on the edge, Joshua had a nice campaign, has a nice new contract. But again, they were had the second fewest amount of sacks in the NFL. And I think having Brandon Graham coming back in that picture, adding in a guy, it's almost like you have two big-time free agents coming in the sense where Brandon Graham is back for a full year. I know it's hard. The older you are, it's hard to come back from injuries, and the Achilles injury is particularly rough one. The same line of thinking, I'm never going to be one who counts Brandon Graham out of anything. So I think having there with Hassan Reddick should make for a nice mix and bolster that pass rush. That's for overrated. I don't want to keep, throwing stuff down the line at Miles Sanders, maybe in the sense that the way people talk about him, and I think it's not necessarily about Miles as more as it might be about fantasy football or gambling or those things like that, given that, hey, he was a second-round pick, as obviously a super dominant player can break off those 60, 70-yard gains with relative ease, even though he might not be the best guy to get you a tough 4, 5, 6 yards. I think there's some expectations based on him because of that, because he's playing in an area where he went to Penn State College. I think that plays a role for him, and I think it's less about himself and more about the way people and fans, even more casual fans, evaluate skill position players from this fantasy football perspective and things like that. He's not going to guy that's necessarily going to have 7, 8 touchdowns a year. He had 0 rushing touchdowns last year. It could be a situation this year where maybe he only has 3 or 4.
I love the two choices, by the way. Jody knows. I think Brandon Graham is one of the most underrated players in Eagles history and Philadelphia sports
completely.
history because he doesn't get sacks. He's never had 10 sacks. He's not a finisher, and people don't realize how good of an all-around player he's been for the Eagles for a long time now. And then with Miles Sanders, I just wrote about this, Shamus. I'm like, I started after his rookie season. Everybody went nuts with Miles Sanders. And I remember.
I think it was a little unfair that he, as good as he was as a pass catcher, and that was 2019. I don't think that was really true to who he is as a player. And I think having a pretty good, surprising rookie season, I wouldn't say worked against him on the field, but in terms of perception and expectation, it did work against him.
Yeah. I remember getting attacked on social media because I said Christian McCaffrey. Remember at the time, Christian was still healthy and maybe the best all-around back in football. And Dalvin Cook were way better than Miles Sanders. And people attacked me like you wouldn't believe. And I was
I believe.
These people are nuts. And now I'm to the point where now I think Miles is a little underrated because people have kind of put him off to the side. I said, no, he's a good back. He's a good player. He's just not. And then I brought this up to Jody as well. There are no bell cow backs anymore. There were 2 1,250-yard backs in the NFL last year in the first 17-game season in history. So more games than ever, right? It was Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb was at 1,259. That's it. And people are expecting a 1,400-yard season out of Miles Sanders. Now, part of it was Derrick Henry got hurt. Dalvin Cook missed a couple games. So there's about 4 or 5 guys that can get in that range of over 1,250. And the Taylors and the Henrys are going to go way above it. I'm not saying it's extinct, but that bell cow back, it's an endangered species. And people expect Miles Sanders to get 1,300 or 1,400 yards. That ain't happening. Doesn't mean he's not a good player, though.
Yeah, I can see it'd be a great season if he went for, let's say, 850 rushing yards and had, 4.6, 4.7 yards per carry. I think that'd be an unbelievable season for him. The way the Eagles use the variety of running backs, that's a hallmark of Nick Sirianni going back to his time in Indianapolis under Frank Reich there. Yeah. I think you're going to still see a healthy amount of Boston Scott. I think they love Kenny Gainwell. I think, he had, 5 or 6 touchdowns as a rookie, surprisingly, even though he had maybe 70 or 80, 90 touches for the entire season. Good rate in terms of getting into the end zone, right? So I think it's a situation where Miles Sanders is more of a situational or complementary piece, and not necessarily a shot at him, but just who he is as a player and the way that the modern NFL has evolved. And again, we're thinking the Eagles are going to throw the ball a little bit more. He missed some time last year, and coincidentally, when he missed some time, that's actually when the Eagles shifted to this uber efficient rush-heavy offense too.
Yeah, and Boston Scott had an even better touch-to-touchdown rate than Kenny Gainwell did, and his was damn good. All right, James, I want to ask you about one of Brendan's running mates on the defensive line, and that's the big guy, Fletcher Cox. coming into this season in a different position, in a different mindset than he ever has before. The Eagles released Fletcher Cox this past offseason. He was released for about 48 hours, and they got a contract redone. But he was actually out there on the open market, and if he wanted to, if it was not an area where they could bridge the gap pretty quick and get something done, it might have gotten even more interesting. But by the time they released him, turned around and signed him, you blinked, you missed it. But he did get released, and he is on a one-year deal. Good one-year deal, $14 million. Nothing to sneeze at, but it's a one-year deal. What do you think Fletcher's mindset is coming into this season? Different role on the defensive line, adding Jordan Davis. We know the defense coordinator is going to go to some different looks. Last year, Fletcher wasn't always buying into everything that Jonathan Gannon was selling. What do you think Fletcher's mindset is here at the start of 2022?
I think he might be a little slighted. I don't mean that as necessarily a gripe that he should truly have with the Eagles organization, but contract situation was a little odd. Obviously, he's back. He wasn't on the market long, like you said. So I think there was an understanding that he was always going to end up in Philadelphia this season. Once more, whether that's true for 2023 or beyond that, that's up for debate, and we'll see after the season. I think it's a situation where they bring in Javon Hargrave, who had a Pro Bowl season last year. They drafted McMullen Williams on day 2 of the 2020 draft, kind of a guy who tested really well athletically, and especially the way he came on late in the season. I have high hopes for him as a rotational or a contributor for not just this year, but in 2023 and even 2024 for him in Philadelphia. And then obviously talk about you called Fletcher Cox the big guy. I didn't know if you were talking about him or the big guy in Jordan Davis there. And not a slight to Fletcher, but it could be a situation come October, November, where in reality, he's the third best defensive tackle on the team behind Hargrave, who's in his prime, and Jordan Davis, who's this ascending talent, was the best player in the best college defense I've ever seen last year.
Yeah, Jody will like that. Especially when you go to the third round more than Jordan Davis. But by
the way, the best college football player on the best defense you ever seen last year is also on the Eagles. He's going to be their starting.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they're 5 first-round picks from that college defense. But we'll go on. You and Evan did something. Godspeed, by the way. Reading every single. I guess the latest one was every single defensive back in Eagles history. So number one was Brian Dawkins. I think that's pretty obvious. So you guys got that one right. But I'm more interested in how much hate you got from this, number one. And then how long did it take you guys to put that together? If you're wondering, by the way, Tim Hawk, my buddy, the former safeties coach, number 43. In the greatest Eagles defensive backs of all time.
43. How long is the list? 167?
It was you had to play a minimum of 50 games, I believe, was the cutoff
50,
we did.
Okay, that's
50
good.
or
so what? It was 70, 78.
The cutoff we did was to make sure Nnamdi Asomugha made the list. So whatever number he played, just so I could rank him last. I don't think he came in last on the entire ranking because we're aggregating.
I got it pulled up. Nnamdi was 67. Shamus
out of what 73.
78.
78.
Dominic Rogers Cromartie was number 78.
I think I had him second to last on mine.
Did he play that many games with the Eagles?
Yeah, so he would have played 2010 for sure, right? No, 2011 because he got traded that offseason after, for Kevin Cobb that year. And then I guess 2012 and, 16 games. Yeah, that sounds about right?
What did you say the minimum you had to play was?
50.
I think however many Nnamdi played.
and
so it's about 2 years worth of games, I would say.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay. So it's Carrie Williams got spent in between shopping for sconces, finished number 60.
Frustrating.
Like Brandon Boykin, he had that one big year. He only made it to 46. Rasul was 48, doing a great job in Green Bay. Mark McMullen, 38. You see Mark still around doing some media stuff. Then we get into the top 20.
Of
You
all
know,
the
the
groups
one,
we've done, that was definitely the most. Obviously, you're combining positions between cornerbacks and safeties, and there was
yeah,
multiple of them at the field of time because we ran quarterbacks after the first few way spare, and I'd say the same for when we did running backs and wide receivers after the first couple of big names. It dropped off precipitously, but I think the defensive back group, and especially showing my age, I'm 28. When I grew up and started watching the Eagles and following the NFL, the Eagles defensive back crew, they almost had two different eras. In terms of the Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor cornerback era, and then what you saw
yeah.
with Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown. For most of my early life watching football, the Eagles were absolutely stacked in the secondary room.
Yeah, it wasn't that case before. The one I'd have a problem, because there's a lot of recency bias with these. Everybody does these things, and that's just how it works out. Bill Bradley, and Rube will tell you this. That's a great, great player. He should be way above 13.
I had him fifth on. We did individual list. He was fifth on mine. Behind
your list is right. Your list is right. Bill was.
So I had Brian Dawkins. Eric Allen was my number 2. I think he is the player with the most interceptions in NFL history without being in the Hall of Fame. Someone who should definitely be in that.
Yeah.
I'm sure Rube has even more stats than that on Eric Allen. I think I had Malcolm Jenkins at number 3, placing some emphasis on postseason success, kind of being the heart and soul of that team that captured the first Super Bowl in franchise history. I had Troy Vincent, number 4, a guy I grew up watching and I thought was unbelievable. And then number 5, I had Bill Bradley, showing some respect for my elders there a bit.
Bill.
I don't have the list in front of me. You got to tell me, where's my guy, Herm Edwards? Where did Herm?
I think he was 12th or 13th.
12th. He was right ahead of Bill Bradley. Now, I love Herm as well, Jody, but Bill Bradley's got to be ahead of Herm on an Eagles list.
Wouldn't argue that. I just wanted to see if Herm got his proper ranking and respect, because he's certainly become more well-known as either a commentator and or a coach after the fact. Herman Edwards was a damn good football player, above and beyond the miracle at the Meadowlands.
I think he's just known as a bit player because of that play, and that's incorrect, though, right?
No,
he's a guy who was successful for a long period of time.
33 interceptions, Herm Edwards, as an Eagle. 33. That's a big number.
All right, now, so let's look at this year's Eagles DB, starting at the corner, which is the brighter of the two positions. James Bradbury's addition, before he was ever released by the Giants, when it was a not well-kept secret, the Giants were thinking about moving on. I had been hyping up for the Eagles and saying, if this guy becomes available, someone the Eagles absolutely should make a play for, even though I thought they could have and should have kept Steven Nelson. They didn't, so you knew that there was an opening at the cornerback position. Got a good, solid, above-average one-year deal, but only a one-year deal. How's he going to pair with Darius Slay? How does the Eagles secondary look specifically at cornerback for you, Shamus, as compared to the rest of the NFL going into the season?
I wouldn't say they have like a top 5 unit or anything like that. I know you see those lists always on Instagram and Twitter coming from Pro Football Reference or Pro Football Focus or someone making a random list. But I think Avonte Maddox, as having a full season as a true slot cornerback last year, I think he was deserving of that contract extension he got. I thought he was a really quality player. And, the way the NFL has changed, a nickel cornerback, a slot cornerback is as much of a starter in today's NFL as an outside cornerback there. And I think Darius Slay, I was someone who necessarily didn't love the trade in the 2020 offseason. I think he really underwhelmed in the 2020 season, even to start the 2021 season. But the guy, he doesn't like being called Darius. He likes to be calling Slay. He likes to be calling big play Slay. That guy made big plays all season long, huge plays that completely shifted, I think, at least 3 games the Eagles won, talking about the Carolina game, the Denver game, and the New Orleans game.
Last one from me, Shamus. You can follow him on Twitter, Shamus_Clancy. Read him at phillyboys.com, deputy editor there. Safety. I think the Eagles are fine at corner as long as people stay healthy. And then you have some questions about the depth, but they have enough young bodies that maybe they can cobble things together. Safety is the one sort of glaring weakness. They tried the Band-Aid, late Band-Aid with Jaquiski Tart. Do you think they've done enough at safety? Are you comfortable with them saying, all right, between the 3, Tart, Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, they should be able to put something together that will at least be competent on the back end.
I have one reader who must detest Marcus Epps because I think I wrote something positively about a month or so ago saying I think the Eagles are really high on Marcus Epps. That's why they haven't made some big move.
Yeah.
And someone was like, just got really angry that I gave Marcus Epps any sort of praise. But I do wonder if it's a situation, I compare it to the 2017 offseason in training camp in August. The Eagles swing a trade for Ronald Darby, a cornerback from Buffalo at the time. I wonder if it's a situation where come August, the Eagles maybe have an injury or something that happens on, not necessarily wishing upon something like that, but whether it's in these joint practices, they feel like they're getting exposed at safety, whether it's in the preseason games. I could see maybe an August trade for maybe a guy who's a little bit more competent back there to study maybe more of a veteran presence, but I think they're okay. As I said earlier, you can't have zero holes complete on your roster unless you're, the Buffalo Bills maybe in a situation like that. So I think it's fine. It's okay. If there's going to be one weak hole, I think I'd rather be safety than wide receiver or defensive line or something like that at this certain point in time.
All right, Shamus, last one for me. And feel free to jot this down if you need to.
Okay.
I think you got enough brain power under that somewhat.
It's got to be math, Jody?
No, not at all. What's the logo on the hat there, Shamus?
It's a X-Men logo.
Oh, yeah, on Twitter. You do that stuff all the time. You're a Marvel guy.
Yeah.
My daughter tries to keep me up to speed with that stuff, and it goes right over my head.
It's even if you're a hardcore fan, it's hard to keep up with it. So no worries.
Really, yeah. I got no shot whatsoever. But you got to keep up with me here. I'm going to throw you out a list of names, and you're going to have to do some handicapping of both players and the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
Fletcher Cox, Jason Hargrave, Bradbury, Kaiser White, TJ Edwards, Anthony Harris, Jaquiski Tart, your boy Epsy. And then on the other side of the ball, we got Dillard, Isaac Sayamalu, Miles, Brandon Scott, Boston Scott Toomey, Zach Pascal, and Gardner Minshew. All these players have one thing in common. They're on the last year of their contracts. We know Howie Roseman likes to get ahead of the game. He likes to do the extensions. You mentioned the Avonte Maddox extension, which I think was very well done, timed, figured out money-wise, and will be a major plus for the Eagles. Howie likes to do that, get that contract done in season. Which of those guys will be the first one that the Eagles, if they get any done, and they almost always get some done, so assuming they get at least one or two done, which one do you think is the guy that will play well enough the Eagles will be motivated to get a contract extension done with, and a guy that the Eagles like enough that they go, all right, this is a guy we want to put into the fold going forward?
Throw a comparison back to the 2017 season. The Eagles sign a former Pro Bowl player on a one-year deal who is looking for more money than that, more years than that. Alshon Jeffrey, one-year deal. Comes in the season, has an immediate impact. He's in his prime. He gets that contract extension.
Yep.
I think the same could happen with James Bradbury, a guy who was an all-pro, a guy who was probably looking for more money and more years than when he got this offseason, given when he was released. He wasn't on the market actively at the beginning of free agency. And it's a situation where the Eagles are doing well. It's September, October. They're stacking up wins. The defense is looking good. He seems like an extension candidate.
I like it. That one absolutely fits. I'm going with Epsy. You're an Epsy guy. Johnny's an Epsy guy. I'm an Epsy guy. I'm saying Epsy is the guy they get done first, because Bradbury, they may need some more time because it's going to be a bigger deal. Epsy, I think they could get done to a nice little extension, but I like your Bradbury suggestion. It may well be the guy. Always a pleasure, Clance. Appreciate you coming on. You got to send me one of those marble hats so I could impress my daughter, or tell me where I can get one.
Okay.
Gotta get my daughter happy. Thanks for coming on with us today, and we'll certainly get you on when camp opens up.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time.